Hello and welcome to a brand new series of This Racing Life. I've come to the tranquil, idyllic surroundings of Banstead Manor Stud in Newmarket, the UK home to Prince Khalid Abdullah's legendary Juddmonte breeding and racing empire. I'm here to find out what makes the operation so successful and to meet some of the leading players, both human and equine, who have played their role in making Juddmonte one of global racing's most enduring dynasties. You're very welcome to a special edition of This Racing Life.
The one thing that is most important in terms of the way that Juddmonte have operated over the years is the full understanding of families.
Racing has always been about the future. We're selling the future. We're hoping that there's going to be something there. We're hoping they're going to be the next FRANKEL enabled.
For Prince Khalid to put together what he's put together inside of 40 years is a truly unique achievement.
He's been an amazing person, an amazing supporter, and what an amazing breeder empire he has.
Simon Mockridge is one of the longest serving members of the Juddmonte team. I started by asking Simon, now stud director here at Banstead Manor, how he came to work for one of the world's preeminent thoroughbred breeding operations.
Well, it's a long story and it started way back when. Prince Khalid just bought Juddmonte Wargrave in 1980 and I joined there shortly afterwards in 1981 as a student and worked my way. I was a second man, a stud groom at Wargrave. And then in 1987, Prince Khalid decided that we needed to have a more commercial base within Newmarket for the stallions. Banstead Manor was on the market at the time and he purchased it from the Morris family. You know, I've been very fortunate and very privileged, as of many of the staff, by the way. You know, the one thing that Prince Khalid does do is he breeds loyalty with his staff, and there are long-serving staff. I'm not the only one. You know, Rory Mann at Ferrens in Ireland, who does all the breaking, has been here just as long as I have done. And we have a number of staff. On average, they've probably been here 10 years, and lots of staff that have done 20 years plus.
And you discuss race planning, obviously, with the Prince. What are his favourite races?
The Prince really has a huge passion and enjoyment of raising and then racing horses, and he will watch every single one of them. It's not just divided into the smaller and bigger ones. So I think it evolves. It evolves, and I don't think that I don't think he probably rates. I don't know, but I don't think he rates races. But obviously, in the early days, the likes of a Beer winning at Royal Ascot, Known Fact coming up and winning Classic and being champion miler, and of course developing into Dancing Brave's extraordinary career of the Derby, followed by Redemption and that last 2 furlongs at Longchamp. I don't think anyone who was there or even sees it will forget that. And then, along with that, the development of the stud farms as stallion stations as well as homes for broodmares. Then you come, Quest for Fame was the first homebred commander-in-chief after that. And so that was essential in terms of getting the stud. It sort of morphed probably from more of a hobby to both a hobby and a business, I would say, at the same time. And then the likes of Dan Silly, he went to stud just at the beginning of the 2002, and then going through to the likes of FRANKEL, of course, in born in 2008. Frankel was followed, then Kingman quite soon after. In the States, of course, he had Arrogate, who was a purchase, but again, he was a very vital horse in the sort of worldwide combination of Juddmonte as an entity, certainly, and some of his performances were extraordinary. And then now we have Enable, and she is really phenomenal, and she really has caught the imagination.
Your connection with Prince Khalid Abdullah, when did that start? Obviously, you've been around since the
It actually started
late
because I was maybe 17, and I rode my first biggish winner. It was a big handicap at Newmarket. I think it was the Coral handicap, whatever, for Jeremy Tree. And I was an apprentice, and I won with this filly, and that was the first time I rode for him, and I got to meet him as a very knowledgeable person of racing. He's been supporting racing before I even come along to this sport. And you know, my first recollection of his horses running is where, when I was a young kid, I went to Newmarket to watch Dancing Brave winning the Guineas. I think I was only about 15, I wasn't even riding. And then, obviously with my association with John, I rode Raya Fan in the Moosac, my first Group 1 for him. And yeah, I've had some tremendous day for him. Obviously Enable tops it all, but you know, he's been an amazing person, an amazing supporter, and what an amazing breeder empire he has. And you know, obviously Frankel does need no introduction, but to be able to breed a horse like it is pretty amazing.
And riding for an owner breeder seems to bring with it a different dynamic compared to riding for an owner who spends money at the sales. You seem to know the families, and maybe that gives you a bit of an advantage, a bit of a feel about the horses that you're going to ride.
It probably means a little bit more because, you know, like you said, you know the families, and not just to me, but even to Prince Khalid. I mean, he's got his own stallions and his own mares, and to have the satisfaction to seeing something from the beginning to develop and to winning big races, it must be, to me it's special, but it must be extremely special for him to see all this, and it may long continue because he's been very, very successful.
I'm thinking about the football team, say Alex Ferguson's team of 1992, Bill Shankly's Liverpool, even Don Revie's Leeds United, should I say, that those teams are held in greater affection because there's an organic aspect to what they do, and that also applies to those homebred champions at Juddmonte. Yes,
it's always hard to put your finger on where the attraction is, but certainly the homebred aspect is very, very important to Prince Khalid, and therefore everyone who works for him, and because we have an absolutely indelible interest in the horse and in every aspect of its life, because it affects us at every aspect. In other words, if the stallions are firing, then that helps the broodmare band, and if the broodmare band is decent, then it helps the stallions. We have then, if we have success on the racecourse, that permeates down because it makes such a difference to everyone. Because we've got half sisters, half brothers. It's the future. We're building on the future.
Does that help you as a trainer that you know the families yourself? Is it sometimes a false friend? Are there things maybe that don't work out how you think they're going to? Do they generally go along the expected lines?
I think nothing goes along expected lines in life, let alone with the genetics and DNA and breeding. But the one thing's for sure, when you've trained in a family, you learn not to make the same mistakes. In other words, you know which way, when to go forward with a horse, when to go this way, that way, when to hit the pause button. You do learn that from training the families. And it was a great joy to discuss those with Prince Khalid, because he knew the traits. He knew which families and line of a family were pleasing him, which were disappointing him. And then you would try and work out ways of adjusting it back, be that in the training or what the mares were bred to. I think you see the same thing where a trainer can be helpful. Francois Boutin with the Niarchos operation for years was a massive influence on the breeding and the matings. And I think that's a very important ingredient, because we not only know the horse physically, but we also know it psychologically. And Prince Khalid was very quick to pick up on all those nuances, combine it together to create the families he's done. And it's an incredible achievement to have done it in 40 years, just shy of 40 years. I mean, the Aga Khan have been going for 80, 100 years. Some of those old Boussac families that Jean-Luc Lagardère bought in, they're old families that they've been building, the Wertheimers the same. But for Prince Khalid to put together what he's put together inside of 40 years is a truly unique achievement.
So it's been an organic process, hasn't it? But one that has almost achieved, almost ahead of its time, if you like.
I think so. I think combining physiologically the right horses and buying a lot of good land, and I mean a lot of land. I mean, the paddocks are big, the horses are reared very naturally, they're not hothoused in any way, and they have to grow and be strong athletes. And I think the ability to know when the ones are not up to standard, and the knowledge that you know when you sell, you could very easily sell a filly that didn't show a lot on the track, suddenly becomes a good broodmare, so be it. It still is part of your families, it still complements your families. And I think his understanding of nature, of the land, of the breed, of the female lines, and what sires to use, what sires not to. And I think for a breeder it's very easy to breed too many of your own mares to a horse you owned and bred and love, and probably send too many of your young mares there. That's a temptation that I think sometimes one has to restrain oneself, and he became very aware of that as well.
And it's your job to advise the couplings that take place. How do you do that in 2019? Do you have a raft of statistics? Is it still a human instinct, the old adage of breeding the best with the best and hoping for the best? How does it subdivide these days, that thought process?
Yes, I mean, we have a mountain of statistics which are available for us to look at. But I think the one thing that is most important in terms of the way that Juddmonte have operated over the years is the full understanding of families. You know, we are incredibly lucky that we have had families for nearly 40 years now, so there is an understanding of their physical type, their physical needs, how they train, their softness. Some of them are a little bit soft and need to be taken a little bit more care of. And it's the introduction of stallions that suit particular families. Statistics will only tell you so much, and I would like to think that, you know, Juddmonte over the years have been a big part of developing those statistics as well.
And the mare Kind is a significant member of one of those families.
Yes.
She produced FRANKEL, who won 14 races out of 14, 10 Group 1s, revered as the outstanding horse, I think, of the modern era. When he started his stallion career here, was he almost on a hiding to nothing because expectations were great?
I think it's fair to say, you know, he came to stud with the most incredible race record, highest rated horse of all time. You know, I think he ran figures of 140 on 7 occasions. So of course when he came here, there was a clamour to send the very best mares to him. He is always going to be on a hiding to nothing, but I think it's fair to say what he's achieved to date is simply miraculous, really. He's already sired 35 individual group winners, you know, 7 at the highest level, 8 at the highest level, sorry. And from that, I think he sits head and above most stallions at this stage of their careers. You know, it's almost a 12% group winners to foals return.
and Pink Dogwood takes it up from Maxad and Annapurna. Pink Dogwood out in front by a length to Annapurna. Annapurna is fighting back on the inside the final furlong. Pink Dogwood is joined by Annapurna, who's running on very gamely for Frankie Dettori, and Annapurna is beginning to get there. Annapurna has won the Oaks.
How important was Annapurna's victory in the Investec Oaks, because that was Frankel's first domestic classic as a stallion?
Yes, first domestic. I would just like to go back on that. You know, obviously Soul Stirring was his first classic winner.
Soul Stirring, she mounts a charge and goes to the front. Mozu Kachan lays down the challenge. It's Soul Stirring. Mozu Kachan goes after her. Mozu Kachan and Nujiwara goes after Soul Stirring. It's Mozu Kachan running around. Soul Stirring sticks away now. Soul Stirring, Mozu Kachan at Miami Abbey Lake, and also Deirdre. It's Soul Stirring to go on, and the favourite is home. A filly by Frankel wins the Oaks.
And actually it was the first time a stallion, for I think it was 12 or 15 years, outside of the Japanese ranks had actually sired a classic winner in Japan. So that just showed you how difficult that was. And he was unfortunate in that first season. You know, Cracksman finished third in the Derby, and then he was arguably very unlucky when he was second in the Irish Derby. So yes, if you want to say, did it get the monkey off our back? Yes, it did slightly. But it was going to happen. We always knew it was going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
At the bushes, Frankel is 15 lengths clear. Frankel is heading down the water last quarter mile. He's making every yard of the running here. Dubarby Gold and Native Khan have moved into second and third places. Parfork is behind in third place. Into the dip. Frankel continues to be in front. He's 6 or 7 lengths clear. Dubarby Gold is coming to second. Native Khan in third position. Inside the last furlong, a horse who is pure class. Frankel has destroyed them from halfway. An amazing performance as Frankel heads towards the line to make every single yard in the Guineas and win it well.
Is Frankel an alpha male, Simon?
Oh, very much an alpha male, Dave. You know, physically he's a big, powerful horse. And the one thing I did learn from Henry Cecil, was that he's a horse that doesn't like an awful lot of change. So we try to keep his management very, very simple. He's easy to deal with, and he's very willing in every respect. But he doesn't like change very much. So Henry told me the story about when, from his 2-year-old to his 3-year-old career, where they tried to move him from his small barn that he had with, I think it was probably about under 6 or 8 horses in it, where he was the dominant horse and he knew he was the dominant horse. And when they tried to move him round to the front stables, which were always reserved for his classic potential horses, he objected vehemently, and as a result of that they had to return him back to the small barn, where he was again very happy. And he has shown that here with us. If you, like last week, we had to move him for 3 days just to paint his stable. He was very unhappy at doing that. But in every other way he's incredibly professional. He gives his best, he's very willing.
Ed, you're assistant manager here at Banstead Manor, and you've got a claim to fame I think that many people will envy.
I do, very fortunate, yeah. I was present at the birth of Frankel, and very fortunately foaled Kingman as well, so yeah. So
you follow Frankel, I suppose, with particular zest throughout that amazing career?
Yeah, very much so. It's amazing experience to look back on it now, knowing what we know, being at the foaling and then watching him develop as a youngster, and then go through his training career, and then actually come back to us after a phenomenal unbeaten racing career, yeah.
Difficult question, was there anything about that foal? Don't know if it was a morning or a night when he was born?
No, very routine there. The mare was relaxed and she foaled in a very structured fashion, and she was very good, and he was very organised as a youngster, which is something that stands out in some of our foalings, and the high class individuals, they tend to be very organised early on, and he was, but apart from that it was normal and routine.
Are there any particular traits that he passes on? It's often said that Frankel doesn't stamp his stock like other stallions do.
If that's a criticism, I would just say to you, neither did Northern Dancer and neither did Mr. Prospector. Certainly the dams have a huge input in what the physical animal looks like. But I think there's lots of attributes that you see with the Frankels. Most common is the slight dome on their heads. Very common is the athletic walk they have, which, you know, like Frankel's great sire Galileo inherits from that side. And it's their will to win. They're very tough, they're very genuine, and they give off their best.
Now the moment, Toronado lower in the saddle, goes past Darwin. Kingman is on the leader's girths, still just trying to keep his powder dry. Toronado quickened up well. Kingman a bit disorganised when first asked to quicken, then Darwin, Toronado. Kingman taking a long time to get balance, now begins to surge. Kingman currying at Toronado, and Kingman will run him down. He took longer to get organised, but he's won the Sussex Stakes.
FRANKEL, obviously, I think it's fair to say that he's the A-lister. He's got a very good supporting cast, and it's almost unfair on Kingman to describe him as that.
You know, from a stallion manager's point of view, he couldn't have started any better, really. You get a classic winner in your first crop, and as he's done, and you've got some very promising horses like Headman and Sangarius, Nausha. You know, he has made a tremendous start. Very, very good looking horse physically, very strong. He had that amazing speed that breeders so really want. If you recall the Sussex Stakes, when they went such a slow pace and he was out the back, and it just took him that 1 second really to adjust himself, and then the turn of speed there to catch Toronado and pass him. I think that's what every breeder wants to see, really. And that's what's made him so popular since he retired to stud. He's been full every year. He's a wonderful make and shape when you actually look at him. He's got great depth and strong quarters, very good hind leg on him. He fits into a box quite nicely. He's nice and square. Very nice head on him, and he's a pure bay breeder, which helps breeders at the sales, and he's an elegant and very nice horse. He's quite relaxed today, and he's quite chilled out, which, you know, for the Green Desert line is pretty good, because they can be a bit warm, but he's very good. And the feedback that we've certainly had from breeders is that the yearlings and the horses that go into training, they all have very good temperaments, very easy to train, great walkers like he is. So he's got all the attributes to make a very good stallion going forward.
Kingman is at the start of his career as a stallion. Uncle Oasis Dream, if I can call him that, we know a lot more about him. Is he the leading stallion from the Green Desert line?
Arguably, yes. It's a very close call between he and Invincible Spirit in terms of where they are in their careers now. Obviously, he's 19 this year. He's rising 20 next year. He's been a phenomenal flag bearer for Juddmonte, it has to be said. He arrived here as a champion 2-year-old and champion sprinter, world champion sprinter, as a 4-year-old. He's been immensely popular throughout his career. The fact that he's now got over 58 individual group winners and 17 Group 1 winners is testament to what he's achieved. It's very difficult, I believe, for sprinters actually to get to the same stage as the Galileos of this world and the more middle distance bred type of stallions.
Choisier taken on by Oasis Dream, and Oasis Dream is now upsized as they race towards the final furlong. Choisier comes under pressure. Oasis Dream a big danger on the outside. Bahamian Pirate third A-Wave runs on, but she's got 4 legs to find. Oasis Dream just in front. Choisier battling all the way, but Oasis Dream has got the Australian horse cooked, and Oasis Dream wins the Darley July Cup.
His success, his early success, obviously came with the faster types, but Midday changed people's perception and thought that, and with the thinking that he would probably get more 1.25 mile horses if you sent him the right mares. Sadly, I think we found to our cost that in the middle of his career, probably when he was 14 and 15, when he was quite an expensive stallion and he was covering a lot of middle distance mares, that didn't that affected his strike rate quite significantly. He started very, very quickly. He was champion first season sire. He was champion British based sire on 2 occasions. He rose very quickly through the ranks. He's now gone back to his starting fee of 30,000, which I think from a commercial angle is great for commercial breeders. He has a yearling average, a lifetime yearling average of over 165,000. So it just shows you the kind of stallion he's been to us. He's been a great flag bearer.
A freshman stallion is Expert Eye. Now, his racing career had some incredible highs, obviously a Breeders' Cup Turf Mile victory. No one will forget that performance at the Qatar Goodwood Festival at 2, or indeed the Jersey Stakes win. In between those, there were moments like almost of frustration, like the second in the Sussex Stakes. What should we expect from him, do you think?
Well, again, he comes from a very deep Juddmonte family. Obviously, he's closely related to Special Duty, who was a dual classic winner, and Sightseek herself, who won 7 Grade 1s in America. So it's a deep family. The bonus for us is that he is by acclamation. So we get a little bit away. We have got Dan Silly in the bottom line, which makes it a little bit more difficult. So we're still stuck with quite a lot of Danzig, but we love Danzig. You know, Dan Silly, Oasis Dream, and now Kingman have shown what a dominant sire line that actually is. We've been very fortunate that this horse actually came to do the job here and has switched from racing to breeding seamlessly, really. He bred 140 mares this year, and he's with 90% fertility, so you know, we're delighted with the way that he's started. He's been very, very well received by breeders, and they've sent him some very, very nice mares. The one thing with acclamation is we see a lot of them tend to be sprinter milers, and when you look at this horse physically, he's very well built, very well made, great colour, good head on him, strong points to him, you know, and good backside. So I would hope that that's what he's going to be known for.
Uphill they come to the line. Bated Breath has taken it up. Dream Ahead trying to get through. Hitch is just in behind that. Bated Breath in front. Dream Ahead though joining him with Hayley Turner, and Dream Ahead has won the Darley July Cup to Bated Breath.
And last but not least of the 5 stallions here at Banstead Manor is Bated Breath. Now, he had 3 Royal Ascot winners this year. He's a son of Dan Silly, but he wasn't a Group 1 winner himself.
He is very similar to his father in many, many ways. Probably slightly different in that he was a sprinter, whereas Dan Silly was a miler. But very similar in that he was placed in 5 Group 1s, and he was very unlucky not to have won at least 2 of those. You know, when he was beaten in the Haydock Sprint by Dream Ahead, it was a nostril. It was very close. And Dan Silly was placed in 7 Group 1s himself. So they came to stud with similar profiles. They came to stud at a similar level, between £8,000 and £10,000. And it took Dan Silly 7 years before he could upgrade himself out of that and to a more respectable level of standing at £30,000. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities with Bated Breath. He has a very good strike rate in terms of winners to runners. You know, this year he's got 13 stakes horses. He's already had 4 group winners. So yes, I think the very best is to come with him. But I would say he's been very well supported by breeders all the way through that as well.
And obviously the rest, as I say, is history, because she just showed enormous exuberance in her racing throughout her 3-year-old career, in all those Oaks and King Georges and then the Ark.
From Prince Carlo's point of view, he's always maintained that it's the mares that are more important than the stallions at the end of the day. And very fortunately, very early on, he invested very heavily, as we know, by yearlings and buying very, very good families, which has led us to the state that we are now in. We have these wonderful families.
No different to having a pet, like a dog or a cat you love. You know, she's been part of my life for now 3 years, and you know, I feel her and I love her so much.